Let's bring in our next guest, who was on ground to observe proceedings as far as that election was concerned. She's the program lead, Nigerian Women Trust Fund, Veneza Gregory. Ms. Gregory, thank you so much for coming on the program. Ms. Veneza, can you hear me? Ms. Veneza, can you hear me? Oh, dear. What a wonderful day with technology. All right, while I'm trying to establish contact with Ms. Veneza, let me bring you up to speed. Oh, fantastic. Thank goodness. Technology has been very unkind to us today. I believe you were on ground, at least you got information as to what played out around. I always like to ask from a general point of view, your own assessment of the exercise. You know, for the political class or the politician, outcome is their ultimate assessment. They win or they lose. But for others, it's the process itself. What do you make of the process?
So we were a group of local observers, domestic observers as we're called, on ground. We deployed 7 organizations with a total of 711 election observers. And when it comes to the process, I would say that, you know, we had observed that at over 50% of the polls, logistics was a problem. So materials did not arrive at 8:30, which is the stipulated time for materials to be on ground when it comes to INEX guidelines, you know. We also saw the deployment of security personnel, but we had observed polling units, our observers reported polling units which did not have any security observed. You know, there was, can you hear me?
I can hear you, please go ahead.
Yeah, where there was no security personnel. We have polling units where they reported roving security. When it comes to voter apathy, it was again something that is of a big concern, because 21% turnout, although higher than the last elections, for an election with for a state with over 2 million registered voters, to have 500 or so voters turn up to vote shows that citizens have really lost interest in the process. And one of the main things that we saw that was a recurring issue during the elections was the incidences of vote buying. You know, this was something that was constant. And as CSOs, we, you know, will say that this does mar the credibility of electoral processes. It also doesn't help in fair competition amongst political parties. You know, my organization, the Nigerian Women Trust Fund, is pretty much focused on the gender perspective of the elections. And we had an observer who came to us and did say to us that at one polling unit, because of the incidents of vote buying, it got a bit rowdy, and the women who had come out to exercise their franchise had to leave the polling unit for fear of their safety. So, you know, this is a serious, aside from the electoral process, this, you know, influences citizens in various different ways. So, you know, this is something that we need to call on political parties to look at and ensure that elections are conducted in a fair manner. You know, I just heard that, you know, because the vote buying, it does not really help or aid the democratic process.
All right, because it's a very big concern. I don't know how much INEC can do, because from the records I have, I stand to be corrected, I know that relating to vote buying incidents, I think the EFCC had arrested about 3 persons with the polling units or the center where I covered in Namibia. I know that I saw the presence of the EFCC, about 15 of them. Maybe they were doing their rounds and all of that. But it looks like this has become the norm. In your view, by your own assessment, What else can be done? Because if it's legislation is not in short supply in Nigeria, we have loads of it. Implementation is always the problem. But when this is becoming a bit of a culture that there's a lot of look away or minor incidents of arrest or prosecution not properly concluded as deterrent, what else is left on the table? Because it's important for us to poke this as quickly as possible so that people don't sell their future due to whatever amount that has been offered them by any of these political parties. As a matter of fact, the political parties are counter-alleging. They are the one committing the crime of vote buying, but they're also counter-alleging against each other.
So I think we need to employ a multi-pronged approach. So address various stakeholders. So we speak to the political parties, you know, and advocate for more campaigning based on issue-based campaigning, you know, and to refrain from inducing voters through different means, be it money or oil, rice. We saw a bunch of things on the field, you know. Also to appeal to the citizens, the electorate, the people who do come out and vote, to desist from taking these inducements by political parties. In Anambra, we did have a polling unit where vote buying was attempted by some party agents, but the people at the polling unit actually chased the agents away and insisted that they would vote in a way that they felt that they wanted to exercise their franchise, you know. And another thing we need to consider is accountability. You know, we always hear these stories of such and such numbers of people have been arrested for counts of various things, electoral offences, but do we follow through? Do we hear of the sentencing? Do they actually get sentenced? So what we need is a greater accountability system. So when you are accused of electoral malpractice, you should be arraigned and charged. The Electoral Act 2022, as amended, sets out the various punishments associated with the different electoral malpractices. So we need to follow through. And as CSOs, we need to push for this process and see that we hold the security agencies accountable for prosecuting these perpetrators. You know, it is not an INEC issue, because INEC is not a persecuted body. They're not a security agency. So although they can call people and name and shame, they're not able to impose these penalties, which is what we need to keep hammering on the security agencies to hold people accountable. Thank you.
Let's talk about security. It was seen to be generally peaceful with little or minor incident. I think apart from, I heard about someone was killed somewhere. I don't know whether it's related to the election. I need to confirm all of that. But how would you assess the security and their performance in this election?
So overall, I would say, as we have seen on the news and elsewhere, people who were on ground, it was a largely peaceful election. Voters conducted themselves in a peaceful manner. Security agents were able to manage the peace. Now, this is twofold. So we can say that the deployment of security was amazing, because majority of polling units recorded security agents present at their polling units. But then again, we need to look at the turnout. With over 2 million registered voters and only over 500 voters coming out, we could say it's largely peaceful because there weren't large crowds, there wasn't incitement, you know. So it's something that we have to keep on looking at and see how it goes in consequent elections.
Absolutely. We'll take a break. Ms. Veneza, we'll be coming back to continue the conversation. Right. In fact, 2.8 million people registered to vote. 2.7 actually collected their PVCs, and just slightly less than 600,000, 584,000 came out to vote. It's an abysmal number, even though it's an improvement from what played out in 2021. It's a big concern on our polity, and that's why we will continue to raise this concern. We'll be right back in just a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. My guest, program lead, Nigerian Women Trust Fund, Veneza Gregory, Just analyzing what played out in Anambra State yesterday, she was one of the observers, domestic observers in that election. Ms. Veneza, thank you so much. Two more questions as we begin to wind down. Let's begin. I'm going to come to what you're really passionate about, which has to do with women. But the reason why I like to stay on the issue of voter apathy, because first, we're interested in the process and participation. First, there's a lot of cost on the state and wastage when people don't show up. Third, which is now a question, how does this impact popular appeal in terms of policy and legitimacy? Of course, is legally they've won the election, but when you have just a handful of people showing interest in who leads them, how does it affect government's performance in a state or in a nation?
So I think it's a thing of when people come together, democracy, we say it's for the people, of the people, the usual spiel. When a group of people come together to elect a leader, they're able to hold them accountable. With such a low voter turnout, it kind of shows that people are losing trust in the system. Citizens are unable to put their trust in democracy, which, further delegitimizes democracy and also speaks to the credibility of our electoral process. When we come to terms with the fact that such a low number of people came out in these elections in the just concluded Anambra elections to cast their vote, it means that, the governor, so to speak, is maybe not 70. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I thought I lost connection for a second. So it's just in a nutshell, it just reduces the credibility of elections, the credibility of governance going forward. It makes us think to what the future will look like. Yes, although we've seen a quote unquote 100% increase in the turnouts, we look to the future. We want to see what the turnout will be. And, a lot of polling units that were observed, we saw that it was the older generation who was out there casting their votes. You have the youth so disinterested in the electoral process, and they are the future of the nation. So if they're so disinterested in the future of the nation, it begs the question, where do we go from here? And we need to put this to the leadership to come out and say, these are the things that we're going to do to build trust back in the electoral process, to build trust back in the governance system of the country. Because if we continue on this trajectory, these trends will only consistently show a decline in participation. And, what is democracy if no one shows up to cast their votes for the different candidates?
All right, fantastic. So let's wind down with, I tried to do a tally of the numbers. 584,054 votes were the valid votes cast, and then the governor won with 422,000 votes. There were two female contenders of the AAC and NRM. They scored 292 and 36. So cumulatively, the two ladies in this contest scored less than 400. Does this say anything to you as to the reception of females in political leadership at that level?
Yes, so, it says a lot, clearly. Just reading out the numbers, the two women together polled less than 1% of the total votes cast in that election, and so it makes us sit back and think. We had two female governorship candidates and 6 deputy governorship candidates in the election. And again, none of the big four, so to speak, fielded a female frontrunner, So we have more inclusivity from the smaller parties. But then that makes us have to think about this, how we strategize going forward. It's more advocacy, it's quotas in political parties. It's giving gender balanced media coverage. It's allowing the women to share their perspectives, their mandates. But on the parts of the women, it's also, we commend them for being bold enough to be the front runners in these elections. But we also need them to, take the bull by the horn, so to speak, seek that media coverage, come out, campaign. We need to urge the security agencies to protect these women during campaigns. We need to, again, back to accountability when there is slander or, online gender-based abuse, electoral gender-based abuse. We need the security agencies to be able to stand up and protect these women. So again, a multi-stakeholder approach. We need all hands on deck, and this is just the start. We'll keep moving on from here, amending and re-amending the role until we see more females elected.
We're hopeful that someday this is going to change. Actually, the data shows that 0.1% is what they scored in this entire election as far as the women who are frontliners are concerned. Veneza Gregory is the program lead at Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Thank you so much for coming through at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.